Hey, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Say I represent a large corporation with some harmful chemicals to dispose of. What should I do?
Do you know they're harmful?
Well, yes.
Do your employees know they're harmful?
Well, some of them, mostly top executives and a few scientists who ran the tests. We really just need to get rid of the chemicals, though.
Have you tried dumping them somewhere else?
What do you mean?
Dumping the chemicals in a river or in the woods.
Well, couldn't that harm the environment or groundwater where we dump them?
Maybe, but how will you know?
I guess only if we try it.
Exactly.
But what if it is harmful?
Are you the largest employer of the community in which you would dump the chemicals?
I suppose yes.
Then there shouldn't be a problem. You're doing more good than harm, right?
Okay, but will we have culpable deniability if it does lots of harm?
Most likely. And even if you don't, you'll have more money and resources to fight any legal battles that might come up.
Okay, but if we end up losing those legal battles, won't that be bad for our company?
Not necessarily. Your company's reputation will suffer slightly in public opinion, but people won't track it easily to actual goods and services that stem from your company.
Whew, okay. But wait, won't it cost lots of money? That would eat into profits.
Don't worry about that. You will have made millions more than any fine or litigation could possibly collect. You'll still come out ahead. Plus, you will never be held personally responsible, and you can leave the company before it all hits the fan.
Oh, well, that sounds good to me.
Now, I have one question for you.
Well, shoot.
Can you tell me which company you represent so I can avoid harmful chemicals?
Ooh, I'm not so sure about that. That sounds like insider trading, and I know that's wrong. You have to take risks like the rest of the world, right?
We are Red Weather Christians. I'm Jen.
I'm Steve.
And we are expats living in Spain, trying to restore faith in humanity one story at a time.
On this season of Red Weather Christians, we'll be highlighting the feel-good stories that make us smile and remind us of the good in humanity.
We hope that as you listen, you become more mindful of the good, and that if you don't see it, you do it.
Or you be it. So hopefully you caught on that our intro was a little bit of satire.
Ew.
You know, a little wordplay.
Right.
And if you're not familiar with this is almost any large corporation that has to deal with it, but more specifically, DuPont. We mainly learned about this through the 2019 movie Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, about how they poisoned the community with their chemical runoff, and essentially the rest of the world through the production of Teflon. Now, that all sounds very bad. How does that fit in to this season of Cheering the Good?
I don't want to look at that bad, Steve. I just want to find something good out of that situation and run with it. That's all I want to do because that's what we're doing on this season.
And yes, they did employ a lot of people, and they were the largest employer in that community, and so people were not interested in fighting them or getting rid of them.
Because those sound like great things, Steve. A big company employing lots of people, paying them salaries, giving them insurance.
And so in those cases, you look only at the good and you ignore some maybe really bad things.
Exactly.
So on this season, we're trying to look for the good, but we don't want to undersell the fact that looking at bad can be a good thing.
We have to be able to be willing to bring about change sometimes. And sometimes the way to bring about change is to focus, unfortunately, on the bad.
Until that bad changes to something better.
Dun, dun, dun.
So
what happened with the Teflon? Like, is it still...
Oh, it's in all of us, by the way. Like, if we took blood samples, we all have Teflon in our bodies.
Oh, yeah, I know that. But as far as the company and everything, like...
Oh, they're totally fine. You can check them up, DuPont, on any sort of finance report. They're still...
So they dumped chemicals into the land around their factories.
Yes.
It got into the groundwater.
Poisoned a nearby
people.
farm. Cows had deformities. It was bad.
And so when people found out about this happening, there were lawsuits and whatnot, and they, did a little bit of good, but it seems like DuPont is still going strong, or what happened? Like, is it...
Yes.
Does it have a good ending?
Kind of. There's good that comes from it, but maybe too late, because a company can't get cancer and die from the chemicals they dump. The company is still alive and relatively well. The people that they poisoned have since gotten cancer and died. They're gone. It's over.
This is feeling kind of overwhelming, though, already, and we just started this episode because you're saying, like, people had to bring attention to this bad thing in the company and, sue the company and do all this stuff, but the company's still going strong, and we all have Teflon in our systems.
Yes, but we know about it now.
Okay.
Granted, that story is not going to have a really good ending, ever.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. It makes it seem like this is overwhelming when you're dealing with big companies.
And that's a different thing. Idealism is a thing. It's something that we have when we're young. We think of things that are grandiose and let's save the world, and if only everyone did this, it'd be perfect. Then we inevitably fade into cynicism as the world didn't embrace our idealism the way we had hoped. We may not give up all hope to make real change, but we have tempered our expectations at the very least.
Yeah. Well, I know that, based on my Enneagram, that I am idealistic as a human, generally speaking.
And that's why we're doing this season, right?
Yay!
What kind of change can we enact?
Based on the Enneagram.
The good that we can do.
Steve loves it so much.
Let's cheer the good, right? Cheer the good. Let's not talk about the bad. So what we want to focus on here is you can think of most scientific or medical things throughout history, and something bad probably happened, and then we wanted to prevent that bad thing from happening or change it to never happening.
I remember this kid's book I had about Louis Pasteur, and this kid in the story gets bitten by a dog, and the dog is foaming at the mouth, and the reader knows, the dog has rabies, but they didn't know what was going on at the time, and so the boy's starting to get sick, and this and that, and so eventually they're like, hey, the boy's really sick from this dog bite. This is a really bad thing. How can we make this better? And then this guy named Louis Pasteur comes up with a vaccine for rabies.
And the boy survived.
Yay. So something bad, noticed it, came up with a vaccine, gave it to the boy survives.
And in previous cases of rabies, it's like, they have rabies, they're probably going to die. Well, at least we can make them comfortable.
Yeah, no, we don't want to live like that. We don't want to live like that. I guess, you got pneumonia. I guess you're dead. No. Let's use science. Let's use medicine and hospitals and people who are trained and heal people and do our best anyway.
I think of lots of safety devices for children. Car seats, in particular, for whatever reason, came to mind. At some point, kids are riding in cars got in accidents, and kids are flying through the air.
Yeah, just flying through the air like confetti.
Or even more
out
morbid,
the windows.
Decapitated by seatbelts.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, think bad things, and then you're like, wait, let's make this better.
Right.
And so it took really bad things and analyzing the bad things to find or create good. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we don't want to live in a delusional world where Steve and I are like, well, let's just look at the good. Let's never look at the bad. It'll be great. We're just going to live in our little good bubble, and that's it.
But we also don't want to become super cynical.
Yes, it is a fine balance.
Everything is bad.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Things are great. So we also want to focus on things that have actually changed throughout time that we think are probably better. I say probably, but I would generally tend towards really a lot better on all of these cases. We're going to pick an easy one here. Here's a layup of sorts.
Yeah, starting with slavery.
So throughout time, people have enslaved people, and that's not great.
No, that is bad.
So we look at that and we say, okay, if that's bad, what can we do better? Not enslave people.
Hey, layup.
But our problem was, in various forms or another, whether it was business enterprises or religious institutions, they said that enslaving people was okay.
Well, religiously, it said, it's biblical to enslave people.
But to treat your slaves well.
Yeah, what?
So you've got some issues there, but ultimately, the world, not just in the U.S. bubble here, the world chose and realized let's stop enslaving people. Let's just stop. Let's just abolish that altogether. Was the U.S. late to the game?
Yes. Well, the South, I guess.
Thank you.
The South.
I had to look this up. Brazil was actually the last relatively developed country to the game of abolishing slavery. Most of Europe and the northern parts of the United States had abolished slavery in the early 19th century or earlier. But the South of the United States had not. So the U.S. doesn't get credit for abolishing slavery until 1865, which is late to the game. In fact, shout out to Victor Hugo and Les Mis. He takes a dig at the U.S. for still allowing slavery, with one of his characters moving to the U.S. to become a slaver.
Oh, hey, just a quick side note here. Congratulations, Steve. You finished reading Les Mis recently.
It was great. 5 stars.
Yay! I haven't read it. Maybe I will someday.
Maybe.
Oh, by the way, Steve rarely gives 5 stars to a book. So shout out to Victor Hugo for writing Les Mis. Steve loved it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So various other things, again, this is religious history we're going to jump into, that brought about change. So we know primarily about the Christian religion. When Jesus came along, he turned Judaism into people following him, Jesus Christ, Christianity, or the way. Is that good? Is it better?
Yeah, that's still up for debate.
But it changed perspective. He looked at the bad that was happening with people who were overly rulesy, maybe legalistic, if you will, and lacking in love. So he said love is the really good thing you should focus on. Let's do that.
That is a good thing. Now, I can go on record as saying that is a good thing.
And if that's what Christianity did the most, that would be best.
If that's what Christianity did the most, that would be best, yes.
So the primary religion that came from that was Catholicism. It is part of Christianity. Christians out there, don't be hating. But it had some issues of its own. Until Martin Luther came along, Catholicism said that the Bible could really only be in Latin. And then you had to teach the people in Latin, which nobody really spoke. They only knew it because of the Bible and religion. Martin Luther says that's not okay. We need this Bible in all the languages. So that brought along Protestantism, which, again, arguably good, bad here. We don't know, yet to be seen. Some pretty nasty things have come from Protestantism, but in general, the idea that having things in the people's language is a good thing.
Yes, I mean, that sounds good. Like having it accessible to everyone who is able to read.
Right. We applaud efforts to translate things into other languages so that information can be
accessible.
Yes. And then you have various things within the more specific religion itself that changed how we do things in life. After the Vatican II, the Catholic Church declared that religious freedom was more of a thing, and they opened dialogue to other religions. That was huge. And it's a good thing. They looked at how bad it was to not talk to people, and they said, it's better if we do talk to people.
Seems good to me.
It took a bad thing to create a good thing.
Right. And moving on, civil rights. Okay? Oy. A very colorful, if you will, history of this, but looking first at gender equality. About a century ago, we had suffrage, which was ratifying the 19th Amendment. That was in 1920. Women could vote. So women have been voting for only just over 100 years. That is crazy to me. And then about 70 years ago, women were allowed to be on jury duty. So for about 70 years, women have been able to be on a jury, making decisions about their peers. I mean, this is baffling to me. Women are about half the population, and until then, they hadn't been able to be on a jury. Ridiculous.
Well, that was partly because of people's thoughts of where their work lay in the house, taking care of kids, and jury duty would take them away from that.
Say what you will, but women make up half the population. And I can't imagine that, over 70 years ago, when they weren't allowed to be on a jury, they were literally all moms. Literally all wives. I mean, even using that argument.
I'm just saying, that's what they would use.
Ay. And you can't do anything if you're a mom or a wife because all you're able to do is take care of the home and take care of your kids.
Right, well, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, and you don't actually even have a brain. You don't have brain capacity beyond that, so you can't even make any other decisions. Then about 50 years ago, we had Title IX. Basically, this allowed women to participate in sports. Crazy. And then also about 50 years ago was Roe v. Wade, which was all about giving women reproductive rights and the ability to have an abortion in a safe and secure environment. That's been overturned, so we are taking steps backwards on that, unfortunately. And for more discussion on the topic of abortion, feel free to go back to our abortion episode, Season 2, Episode 4. So given women's history, it's no surprise that there have been 0 female presidents and 1 vice president.
And only recently.
Yeah, currently she is in office.
But, Jen, come on, shouldn't women be happy to wear gold and braid their hair?
What?
Shouldn't they be glad to even worship in the same sanctuary as men?
Okay, you're going to the Bible here, I get
Shouldn't they be honored to teach the children? Look at all the good they can do and all the good they have. Why would they think it necessary for them to give a sermon? Because not being able to is bad and wrong. We're talking to you, Southern Baptist Convention.
And if you want to hear us discuss this even more, you can flip on back to, I don't remember which season, but it's called Misplaced Masculinity. Enjoy.
And while we could talk more about these situations, or race inequality or equality, or interracial marriage, or for LGBTQ plus and transgender issues, we could go on. There's good to be changed in those areas.
Absolutely. But moving on to something else, fast fashion. If you have not seen the SNL sketch called, what is it? Shimu. Please, I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes to go watch it. It is hilarious and so incredibly apropos. Basically, it's a commercial spoof making fun of brands like Shein. Is it pronounced Shein?
I don't know.
Shein, and Temu. I don't even know these brands, okay? But they're like these online brands, or not even necessarily online, I'm not sure. But they're really, really cheap. We're talking like $2.99 for a dress. And it's so tempting, right? Right, Steve? You just see like, oh my gosh, what a cute dress. And maybe you see influencers wearing this dress and they're like, I got this for $2.99. Oh my gosh.
When would I see this?
I'm joking. But it comes up on my social media here and there, for sure. And I'm sure for some of you listeners, you've come across it as well. But SNL does this amazing commercial spoof, and it's these models wearing the clothes and talking about the clothes and asking questions. And then there's this kind of all-knowing voiceover that is talking to them and answering their questions. And the first question that comes up is this model is like, why so cheap? And then the voiceover just says, don't worry about it. And that's it. That's the crux of it, right? Like, this is what we do. We have a really like fleeting question, like, why? Oh, I wonder why it's $2.99. And then something somewhere just says, don't worry about it. And we just don't worry about it. We're just like, well, whatever. It's so cheap. I have to buy it. I can't not buy it. It's so cheap.
I could easily not buy it.
I know, Steve. We know this. But then the commercial goes on and it says things like, the voiceover's like, not made with forced labor. And then the model's like, okay. And then it says, no prisoners involved. And the model's like, did there used to be or something? Why bring that up? And then it says, normal number of working hours each week. So like 40 or what? Don't worry about it. It always goes back to, don't worry about it. But they're bringing this up. Oh, this is a term that I like. It's called paralipsis. When you say you're not going to talk about something, but then because you said you're not going to talk about it, you've just brought up the topic. And that's what's happening here. Like, no prisoners involved. It's bringing to our attention that, are there prisoners involved? Why would they say that? And these fast fashion companies are doing super shady things. They very well are using prison labor. They very well are making these people work more than a normal number of working hours each week. It goes on, like Jake Gyllenhaal's in the commercial and he's like, there's like a note sewn into my jacket. And then the voiceover's like, that's a thank you note from a happy worker. And then they're like, premium fabrics with no lead. And then Jake Gyllenhaal is like smelling his shirt. He's like, smells like gasoline. He sniffs it and he pulls his head back up and his nose is bleeding. And then it all comes together at the end with the models basically saying like, this seems kind of shady. Like it does smell like gasoline and like their clothes are ripping and like the soles of their shoes are coming off. And they're like, I don't know about this. And then the voiceover says, if it was shady, would you stop buying it? And then they all one by one admit, no, they wouldn't stop buying it.
That's us, by the way.
That's us. That's people. That's humans.
We buy it. We look for that cheapest thing that we need to fix whatever problem we think we have.
And we rationalize it because of the price.
And why shouldn't we save? Other people are saving.
Yeah.
We should save.
We have been told that saving money is good. We have actually said those words. Saving money is good.
It is. I would argue in the right ways.
Yeah. So it's tough, but if you do allow yourself to entertain those questions, like, why does it smell like gasoline? Is it made with lead? Are there prisoners involved? And don't just stop at the don't worry about it part. You might decide, hey, this is something I'm not going to buy and be okay with it.
I was at the don't buy it before I saw the commercial.
Well, good for you, Steve. Not everyone is perfect like you.
Because I didn't need a new thing of clothes of any kind.
Well, that is what we're working towards, a mindset shift, right? Where we understand that we don't need as much stuff as everybody wants to tell us. Which is a great segue.
Which is why we tend to go to secondhand stores for both clothes and furniture whenever possible.
Yes, as you know, we recently purchased a house and moved in to this empty house, zero furniture. So we tried our best to get as much furniture as possible from secondhand stores.
Also, the house itself, it's interesting. In Spain, they do different taxation depending on if it's a new build, obra nueva, or a secondhand house.
Oh, yeah.
So we paid lower taxes because we bought
a secondhand house.
Secondhand house. Like someone had already lived in it. Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Well, I have noticed that it is pretty popular to build from scratch here. Like you see new properties going up kind of all over the place.
It's very similar to the States.
Yeah. So I guess there's something to be said. It's a little like, thank you from the government to buy a house that has already been constructed.
And while we are not perfect in this, we do try. And that's the idea behind it. We did have to get some new furniture simply because what we needed or wanted was not available at a secondhand store. And that happens.
Not for lack of trying. We were looking for a bed frame for a long time, and we just couldn't find one. And so we caved and bought one from IKEA.
That was also problematic because we bought the mattress first.
We made a mistake. We didn't know. We made a mistake. We bought the mattress from IKEA without getting a bed frame because we were thinking, well, we'll definitely get a used bed frame. We'll get a new mattress. Okay, you can understand that maybe. But then we couldn't find a bed frame to fit because IKEA's mattresses are weird. The
Swedish sizes.
The sizes are weird.
They're just bigger in Sweden.
Anyway, so we have a nice big bed. Hooray!
I recently read a book called Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. He's more known for his book Evicted, but this is a way that I saw some actionable steps that I could take in my life. He suggested trying to do most of your business with B Corporation certified companies. He suggested Done Good, which is an online shopping alternative to Amazon, where the products are from good places and sourced in different locations, but with more transparency about the labor.
Yeah, this is good because I recently read an article that mentioned that even Etsy, which I always thought was like pretty decent as far as like it's kind of like artisans from their homes making their own goods or whatever, that it's even been infiltrated and that there's shady stuff happening on Etsy now too.
Well, we actually know one of those things that's shady on Etsy. When we brought the alpaca blankets from Ecuador to give to friends and to sell kind of as a missionary funding endeavor, people went nuts for them.
Yes, but I was like scratching around and just seeing like, oh, I wonder if these are available for sale in the States. I'm just curious. And I found them on Etsy for $160. Now, mind you, you can go to Ecuador right now and go to the market and buy one for
somewhere between $20 and $25.
Depending on how many you get at a time, because you can bargain.
And where you buy it and who you barter with.
Right. And so, yikes.
Which was...
Oh, and not only that, they were taking the blankets from these women who were selling them at the market. They were taking them back to the States and they were sewing their own brand tag onto the blankets. Oh my gosh, that's super shady, I think.
While we like someone who's supporting Ecuador or other Andean regions,
I doubt if they're putting their proceeds back into the Ecuadorian economy.
I'm just saying, while we support that, it is shady. Another one that Matthew Desmond recommended was Boycott, which is an app that can scan barcodes and you learn company info and more when you scan something. So you're like, oh, was DuPont actually part of the construction of this particular item?
Oh, like a pot or a pan?
So you get more information than you would just looking at on the shelf in whatever organic store you might be shopping.
I just have to, a quick aside here, because we were talking about secondhand stores and I just brought up pots and pans and DuPont and everything. Guess what I found in a secondhand store? I'll tell you. I found Le Creuset pots and pans. 2 little pans and a pot with a lid, and the lid fit on one of the pans and the pot. Can you believe it?
I can barely believe it.
Oh my gosh, it was very exciting. But all that to say, secondhand stores, man.
They're great.
All right, moving on to ingredients. Okay, so we just kind of mindlessly eat, don't we? Don't we? We're just buying that boxed Kraft macaroni and cheese, and we're just eating that yellow 5. But you know what? Research had started to be done showing that yellow 5 was really bad, and it was linked to all kinds of bad things and ADHD and blah, 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 blah. And so what happened is when people started realizing, hey, this is a bad thing, this blogger that I used to follow, her name was Food Babe and others brought attention to this bad thing. She started a boycott and she started a petition. And the petition gained so many signatures that you know what happened? Kraft Foods, this huge corporation, actually swapped out their artificial food colors, including yellow 5 and yellow 6, for natural spices. Paprika, annatto, I don't know how to pronounce that, and turmeric. Isn't that crazy?
Nobody really noticed.
I know. And here in Spain, I mean, a lot of these artificial colors are banned in the European Union. And so that's been great for us living here. We have really appreciated that.
While some things change slower in some arenas than others, it mainly needs to be seen as deplorably bad to stop doing that thing.
Yeah, and why can't we just say, hey, this is a bad thing. It doesn't have to be deplorably bad, but it's a bad thing. Let's go ahead and make a change so that it can be a good thing.
But if it costs money, then that might be a bad thing.
Or if you're fighting a huge corporation, that could be a bad thing. That could be a bad thing for you and for your family. And it's complicated. All that to say, do what you can do. If you see something bad and you can make a change, do it.
And we do think people, policy, and programs can change for the better. What a depressing world it would be if we are fatalistic about any effort to do good. And that's why when we're talking about looking at the bad, we don't want you to focus on the bad and think how bad everything is.
We don't need you to fixate on it and obsess over it.
We want you to look at the bad and see how you can make it better or even good.
Ew.
That's our focus here.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Jen.
And remember, cheer the good.
Don't boo the bad.
But sometimes,
boo the bad to enact change to good.